Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa. So we are here for our weekly session or bi-weekly session, I would rather say, every Tuesday and every Thursday with our Pan-Africanist and analyst regarding the Horn of Africa and anything that has to do with Africa. Kwame Gonza. And for today, our topic is recently that happened, the G7 summit in Japan, actually in a historical place in Hiroshima. So we will be looking at, as usual, we will try to give you a background, and then we will look at the major things that happened there. For example, the Biden's comment on China and what is really are things normal? Is everything going as is it business as usual, or are there things that they are panicking? And also finally we will give you a Pan-African perspective of what Africa should take from this. Having said that, I would like to welcome my brother here. Welcome, Kwame.
Thank you very much, Mahlet, and greetings to the people who are out there watching us on Connect Africa. As usual, we are here, as Mahlet has rightly mentioned, every Tuesday and Thursday. So make sure to always tune in and invite other people to come and tune in onto the channel so that we can educate ourselves. We analyze these situations, but more so, what is more important for us as Africans is to see where we fit in as Africans, how these issues affect us. We have mentioned before on numerous cases that the Berlin Conference happened in 1884 to 1885. But when it was happening, it is because we Africans did not know what was happening that we were caught off guard, and our continent was colonized for almost, how many years? More than 70, 5 years. So if we had known, if we were studying what is happening in Europe, we would not have been caught off guard. So this is the very reason why we are here to discuss such issues, so that this time we are not caught off guard. As we are going to see right now, the G7 summit happened in Hiroshima, Japan, last week. So what were they discussing about? What were they looking at? What should we expect as Africans? What are their concerns? What were their concerns? And who are they? Who is this group of people that are carrying out this so-called summit? What should we expect as Africans? What is the lesson in this summit for us as Africans? And is it good, that we should stand by and we clap for them, whatever they are doing? So these are the things which we want to, twist around, which we want to talk through and examine from all sides. And so come in and support the channel, share the material which we have already produced. We have produced tremendous good material already on the channel. So go out there and watch it, because the things which we have been discussing, some of them have been happening in the future, currency, global events in Saudi Arabia. All these things we have been scrutinizing them and how they affect Africa. Biden is a summoning of the president of Saudi Arabia. We have been all these things scrutinizing them and digesting them and analyzing them to the extent that we are seeing some of the things we have been talking about in the past happening today. So go out there and watch at the channel extensively, because all these programs have been produced for you to understand what is happening and what should we do about it. We don't stop there, but we also discuss what we should do about it as Africans, and we are doing something about it as Connect Africa. We are working with other organizations to push in the direction of organizing, as they have always said, that these people are not more than us. They are not outnumbering us. We are not outnumbered, as one of the revolutionaries said, Kwame Ture. We are not outnumbered as Africans on the international stage. We are only out-organized. So that direction of organizing, we are also moving in it. We are working with numerous organizations, Africa Continental Unity Party. We are working with the PLO Lumumba Foundation. We are working with the Worldwide Pan-African Movement, Pan-African Congress. These are all organizations which we are working, Economic Fighters League in Ghana. So different organizations across the Pan-African world, the Global African Congress. So we are people who are working with other organizations to be able to make a contribution towards the liberation, the total liberation and independence of Africa. So you have to support us. You have to give us your support. There is no other way to give us your support apart from other than starting with supporting the channel, liking the channel, sharing the material, and inviting others to subscribe to this channel. I want to thank you very much, Mahlet, and I would like to show a short video which discusses a little bit about G7, which talks about a little, about G7, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Good one. Thank you, Kwame, for that. Let's go and hear the video or watch the video, and then, as usual, as we always do, this is a research-based analysis, so we always give you a background on what we are going to talk about. So, but before that, please let's watch this together. Please go ahead and share it, Kwame.
Okay. Yes, you can bring it on the screen, Mahlet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
all right. Thank you very much.
This week in Hiroshima for the annual G7 leaders are meeting this week in Hiroshima for the annual G7 summit. This year's G7 summit really reinforces the view that the G7 is back. A few years ago, there was a widespread perception that the G7 was in decline, eclipsed by the emergence of the G20. Well, the G20 has declined in relevance given the participation of Russia and China in that forum. And the G7 has once again emerged as the venue for the major economies of the world to coordinate policy on the critical issues of the day. Once every 7 years, the G7 summit is in Japan. It's a rare opportunity to really focus on the issues specific to the Indo-Pacific. I expect that there will be 4 broad themes that characterize the backdrop of this year's G7 summit. First is, of course, support for Ukraine. Japan has been a leading voice in drawing connections between security in Europe and security in the Indo-Pacific, noting at one point last year that Ukraine today could be East Asia tomorrow. Second is China, which will be present explicitly and implicitly. You can expect strong support for peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, reinforcing a message that the Taiwan issue is not just one between the United States and China, but a global issue. Implicitly, there's a broad agenda related to economic security that the leaders will push. These efforts will also be very much on display during the meeting, although China itself may not be mentioned in all cases. Third is outreach to the global south. Japan has been concerned that Russia and China are capitalizing on perceptions of hypocrisy in the developing world related to the invasion of Ukraine. So this year's G7 agenda will feature a robust outreach to developing economies. And finally is a message related to nuclear disarmament. Prime Minister Kishida is from Hiroshima, and he will use this event to spotlight the dangers of nuclear use and to remind the world that we must continue to have and to strive for a vision of a world without nuclear weapons, even though in the near term it may not be realistic or feasible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that is it. That is it. That is it.
Yeah. Having watched this, let's still get a background of who are the members and remind us what are the objectives of G7 when it is established and what it is doing now, and then we go to the core of the events.
Thank you very much, Mahlet. G7 according to themselves, is a group of countries, a group of six, direct countries, and of course with Europe, in addition, who they call an unofficial member to the group. But the official members are Canada, France, Italy, German, uh, Japan, the UK, and the US. So the EU is the unofficial member of the group. And from what they say that this is an intergovernmental political forum that is focused on what they call the advancement of global democracy or liberal democracy, what you would call the liberal democracy. But what we see, of course, in reality is that when you examine very well this group of countries, you are seeing that these are colonial countries. It's a group of colonial countries. When you examine them, uh, like we said, you can look at the US. We all know what the United States has done all over the global landscape, all over the world after taking over in 1945 from Europe. Europe has the colonial power, and its other powers like the UK and France and Germany, all of them who had colonies on the African continent and also around the globe. So the United States is the leader of the new colonialism, or what we call the neo-colonialism. And now Europe is in the position where it is just following. Now, on the other side, also, when you look at Japan, Japan also is a colonial country. That you see that in Asia, in parts of Asia, Japan went and even colonized Taiwan, and separated Taiwan even from China, colonized China. That is why China actually has a lot of friction with Japan. And Japan decided to align itself with this group of countries because of the fear of China. The Chinese have a very long view of history that they don't, easily forget. So they still have that grudge that Japan came in and killed their people and destroyed them. So Japan sees that the only way to align itself, to protect itself from the wrath that probably, and retaliation and retribution that may come with China when it is coming to retaliate, as it has grown, is very strong right now in Asia, in the East. The only way to protect itself is to align itself with the Western world. And so that is why you see that this group of countries are together. And their purpose, even though they say it is to advance democracy and good governance across the world, and to advocate for the International Monetary Fund and restructure it, and all these things so that it can behave very well towards the global south and stuff like that, and shape the world, in favor of democracy and good governance, for a better world. They're trying to shape policy for a better world. That is what they claim. But that is not what we see. What we see is that they are colonial countries who are trying to shape the world in their image. So they group together, and like you can see from the video which we have just watched, that was done from the video which was done from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which of course these are all neo-colonial institutions which work together with the United States and Europe. Their focus and concerns, you can see them, of course, that the number one concern on the list that they're going to discuss, or what they were going to discuss, or what they discussed, was Ukraine, and how they can continue to contribute to Ukraine. And what we see in this, of course, is that there is some differences within themselves, the colonial countries. They have some differences. They have some friction inside. So that is why they see the need to come together and try to iron out those differences. Like we see Japan is still buying Russia's oil, because of the economy. If it doesn't buy Russia's cheap oil, then the economy will shrink. That is a problem. So they want to iron out those differences. You see, German also right now is suffering because of the expensive energy that is they're buying from the United States. Europe, the whole Europe right now is buying very expensive energy from the United States and from all the other parts of the world. Like you see, like India, for example, who was an observer, of course. India is an observer to G7. Prime Minister Modi, Narendra Modi was there also, as an observer. India has been buying oil from Russia actually at a cheaper price and reselling it to Europe, at a higher price and getting profit. So they want to iron out all these questions and these situations. So number one for them was the Ukraine and how they can continue to support Ukraine. Number two, of course, it was China and Taiwan. Number three, they were saying the economic security. They want to look at how they can protect their economies, and all that. And then, of course, they spoke about the nuclear war, how the very reason why they congregated in Hiroshima, which the United States, of course, dropped a bomb, a nuclear bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, is that they want to remind each other and the world that it is not good to use nuclear weapons. And of course, this claim of reminding each other about the dangers of nuclear weapons is actually directed towards Russia. They are trying to blackmail Russia, I would say, into saying, into shaping, of course, global opinion to say that Russia should not use nuclear weapons because nuclear weapons are very dangerous and stuff like that. But they want to continue to provoke China. I mean, they want to continue to provoke, of course, Russia and China at the same time. As you have seen that they are claiming that Taiwan is a global issue. Taiwan is not a global issue. Taiwan is a Western issue. And actually, at the beginning or originally, it's supposed to be a Chinese issue because Taiwan is internationally recognized that Taiwan is part of China. So there's no way you can say Taiwan, China, and Taiwanese issue is a global issue, like how this man from the Center for Strategic and International Studies claimed. This is a lie. It is not an international issue, but that is how they want to shape it. Just like how the issue of nuclear weapons, they want to shape it as if it is an international issue. So this, in essence, is the G7 as an organization. It's an organization of countries that have decided to look at themselves as superpowers because they have big economies. They are the biggest economies in the world, and they want to consolidate their position, like how you see I mentioned here, countries met, in 1884, which were superpowers that time, to consolidate their position and colonize the rest of the world, and of course, they partitioned the Africa in that. And so this is what we are seeing even in this position that these guys are trying to do when they come together. We are seeing a group of countries which are the most powerful economically coming together to consolidate their position, their colonial position and control of the world and the world affairs, and continue to dominate and push down anyone who comes up to challenge them, or anyone who grows economically. It becomes a threat. So this is this group of countries and group of people.
Interesting, Kwame. Yeah, very also for them to choose that place is like, who dropped nuclear bomb, and then about who you are talking about. But of course, they have the courage and all the arrogance and everything. So you cannot blame them. Now that we have established kind of from your analysis, the core of it was Ukraine and Russia. President Biden commented something where he says, I don't know if you have that video, but otherwise I will go and read it out, where he said, "We are not decoupling or turning inwards. At the same time, we recognize that economic resilience requires de-risking and diversifying." What does he mean by this?
Actually, the usual um, statements which are not, backed by facts. If you look at the last 10 years, for example, China has contributed to global economic growth more than 35%. It has contributed more than all the G7 countries combined,
Wow.
because all the G7 countries have contributed less than 25% to global economic growth and development. So China has contributed more than 35%. So these statements by President Biden, for example, are not congruent, are not in sync with the reality. They don't match up with the reality. The thing is that President Biden is continuing the same policies which actually were started by President Trump, even though they claimed that he's different. In the eyes of the global South, uh, the policies that come out of Washington are the same, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, because the results for us, this side, has been the same. It is only different in intensity, that Trump was intensifying the bombing of Syria and the stealing of Syria's oil, and we see Biden intensifying war and giving weapons. So the policy is the same. Even people like you look at as moderate have become much more radicalized. People like President Obama, you see what he did, that came and destroyed Libya. And this is somebody who was counted on and even given a Nobel Peace Prize, before the attacking of Libya happened. Probably the people even who gave him the Nobel were trying to prevent these wars, but even with his Nobel, it did not prevent him from starting these wars. So the mentioning of these statement, the putting out of this statement that they are trying to de-risk and they are not trying to decouple from China is not the reality. On the ground, when you look at the reality, they are imposing sanctions on Chinese companies. Huawei, which was at one time in 2020, 2021, the biggest phone manufacturer, across the globe, to the extent that at one time it even overtook Samsung, was sanctions were put on it that it would not access the Google software, microchips, that the company has been almost crushed, that is right now it has retreated. It is only surviving in China. So the statements, they don't really show the reality. Huawei was banned from its equipment, communication equipment, telecommunication equipment was removed from Europe. Many countries in Europe, the UK banned it, the United States banned it. So the statements are not in alignment with the actions. So in reality, what they are doing is actually they are decoupling, and they are pushing also Europe to try to decouple from China. We have had these discussions have started, of course, already, that how would it feel like if Europe decoupled, from China? It is because it is going on right now. It is going on. The United States is trying to push Europe so that Europe can decouple from China. So all these statements are the usual hypocrisy. Even I'm surprised that this gentleman from the Center for Strategic and International Studies mentioned it, that China and Russia are capitalizing on the perception, the new perception, the perception that are arisen out of the global South, that the West, when it comes to the war in Ukraine, they are hypocrites. You see, so the whole world is capitalizing on this because it has seen this is the reality. And so when Biden mentions such a statement that they are trying to de-risk the economy from China, he mentioned as a group, actually, as G7, they are trying to de-risk. So that shows you that they are trying to decouple. As a group, he's pushing Europe to decouple from China, and which is actually going to be very dangerous. It is going to be catastrophic for the global economy. It is going to affect the global South tremendously, because we have seen the assault, the United States assault, being pushed into the global south. We have seen in South Africa how they have been coercing South Africa to try to force it to bend into the will of the United States. So that means the next step which they are coming with actually is to coerce Africa to stop trading with China. That is what is coming right now from what I see. Because right now they are claiming that they want support for Ukraine. There is an attack on Ukraine and stuff like that, and that is why they are attacking South Africa and attacking all the other countries in Africa which are resisting this coercion. But what is coming next? They are going to start coercing Africa and said Africa should decouple. After they have coerced, after Biden has succeeded, or the Americans have succeeded in convincing Europe to decouple from China, then they will come to Africa all together and start fighting against Africa, that Africa should not trade with China, Africa should not take loans from China. And as we have seen that the IMF has come up very strongly, after the COVID-19, which happened in 2020, that the IMF has come up, hugely on the continent, heavily on the continent, that is now giving loans. So this is the process that they are coming towards. And all this, to answer your question, is just hypocritical. It's not true. What they are saying is just, common lies which they have been saying, and which people, of course, have discovered and realized that this is, absolute hypocrisy.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Kwame, for that. It's really, I am really curious what, I mean, they already started to come to, this shuttle diplomacy. So many of their officials have been here, although like it's given under the pretext of something else, their visit, but it's always about China. And we have seen, I mean, a number of African leaders or officials coming out and talking on a mainstream media. We have seen a concrete, a tangible relationship with China. So let's see when more pressure comes, how they're going to react. Hopefully they will continue to resist. Now that we have seen Ukraine and Russia and China versus Taiwan, but China as it is, and also banning. We have seen the Fox News, for example, talking about there was a leaked information from the White House, which they thought anticipated that Biden will talk on this summit regarding to ban investors. I don't know if it's American investors or global investors not to invest above a certain amount, but that didn't come, and they are even coming all out against Biden. Why he didn't say that, why he didn't go and ban the investors from investing in China. So all this is like, I mean, you have told us the objective and why this summit, why G7 is established. Is it a face saving? I mean, could it be that things are not going as expected? What are they fearing? I feel there is some kind of panic. What is it? Can you spill the tea, as they say?
Yeah. So things actually are not going as smoothly as they wanted them. When you look at the figures, for example, when President Trump started the war on Ukraine, and he started the war on China, the trade war, which was started, you see that actually when he started that war, the Americans actually were the ones who were paying more for the goods. The trade war, even though it affected China in one way or the other, but again, other people who have looked at the data, they say that it affected the Americans much more because they started paying for twice, or by a certain percentage, 50% more for the goods which were being imported from China, simply because those goods are not manufactured in the United States. Now, when we come to the sanctions on Russia, we see that these sanctions are not producing the intended results. A few months ago, we were here analyzing and talking about the banks which are collapsing in the United States. You know, we saw First Republic, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank. We in Europe, the Swiss bank was collapsing. So all these banks have collapsed in the West instead of collapsing in, instead of collapsing in Russia, where they are imposing the sanctions. So it shows you that the plans are not going as intended. Things are not going as planned. When we look at, again, the figures in Europe, for example, apart from the collapse of the banks in the United States, when we look at Europe, the figures came out recently. The German economy is actually right now shrinking. In the first quarter, of this year, it shrunk by 0.3%. That means it did not grow. Instead of growing in the positive, the economy grew in the negative by 0.3%. Last year, the same economy, and mind you, Germany is the biggest economy in Europe, of course, because it depends a lot on manufacturing. The economy last year, the fourth quarter in 2022, it shrunk again by 0.2. That was, 0.4. Last year, it shrunk by 0.4. This year, the first quarter, it shrunk by 0.3. So it shows you that things are not going well in Europe itself, that the growth that is supposed to happen in Europe right now is instead, the relative growth is instead in the United States. You can see that the United States in the first quarter of this year, between January and April, at least the United States grew by 1.3. And why has it been happening this way? It's because the United States removed Europe from buying the cheap Russian gas, which is supposed to run their industry. And now the United States is the one which is supplying the oil and the oil and gas to Europe at a very expensive price.
Wow.
Actually, more than twice the price. So the United States is growing while Europe, is shrinking. The economies are shrinking. You have seen what has been happening in France also, that people are demonstrating on the streets because Macron doesn't have money to give out to pensioners. The money is not there. The government doesn't have money to give to the pensioners. So he thinks that the best way is to increase the pensioners' age, so that the money will be used for some things else. So there's problems, and France and Germany, they are the biggest economy in Europe. So things are really not going as planned. Things are not going as planned. The economies are suffering. Even Japan itself, when you look at its economy, things are not going very well. And yet, instead, in China, where they have also imposed the sanctions on the technology sector, for example, they don't want them to receive the chips for high value manufacturing of aircraft. China, we see that it has launched just a few days ago on Sunday. It launched its first commercial aircraft, which is originally manufactured, which is 60% manufactured in China. It was able to launch it. So you can see that China is still moving in the positive direction. Its semiconductor industry is trying to rapidly ramp up and build its semiconductor industry. So you can see that the people on whom sanctions were actually imposed, China and Russia, they are actually doing well. And China grew actually in the first quarter of this year. China grew by 4.5%. And the economists have predicted that if China continues to grow even at, because they have said China's economy has slowed down, because it used to grow at 10%, 8%, 7%. It has slowed down. But even with that, economists said that China just needs around 4% consistent growth to bypass the United States in a few years by 2020, I think by 2020, by 2030 or 2035. But when you look at purchasing power itself, China has already overtaken the United States economy. So you can see that the people on whom sanctions have been imposed are doing well, and the ones who are imposing the sanctions are really not doing well, and hence this summit, which we are seeing, that the so-called G7 summit, because their economies are really not in a very good position, and this is due to the growth, the relative growth that is happening in the global south, and of course in China. And when you slow down China, the global south is going to be affected tremendously, because like countries like our, countries in Africa, even though we still want to add value to our products, we are still in reality depending on our raw material products, which we sell to China. And as China is growing, also that growth is reflected on our side. And if China slows down, then it's going to affect us also as a people who are connected to the growth that is happening in China.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kwame. I mean, good for Russia and Ukraine that it didn't go down, but it's maybe we will come back on that discussion. We talked about, the American dollars the American banks are collapsing, and also we also did another one on de-dollarization. But currently, again, another couple of banks have joined, and even I think today I read that. Cash, the saving cash will have a problem in American banks. Not all of them, but yeah. So we have predicted. So many of Kwame's presentation here has predicted this. So please, really.
And also we have not mentioned the debt ceiling that has been raised. Now that means that the United States is being allowed. Biden reached an agreement with the Speaker of Congress in the United States that they agreed to raise the debt ceiling of the United States. What this means is that the United States should borrow more. It should print more money. And when they print more money, according to some experts like Ray Dalio, who are world-renowned investors, they say that this does not fix the problem which the United States is facing, because it had run out of money. Now they are going to switch on printing machines. But the switching on of this printing machine, at the same time, when they were raising the interest rates to control the inflation, it is like they are doing now the opposite, because they are going to print, and again, inflation is going to rise up. At the same time, countries across the globe are rejecting the dollar. Those dollars are coming back home. And at the same time, you are printing more. So they are really in a huge problem. And what we are seeing, like you mentioned, it is face saving. They are trying to save face, but they are really in huge problem. And I wish that our African leaders really knew that these people are in huge problems. They will right now begin to reject everything which they are being told, that go here, go there, we are giving you aid. They're not giving you aid, these people. They don't have the money.
Yeah.
So this is the issue I think I would encourage. This is the way I would encourage our African leaders to go. This is the direction I would encourage them to, to take, to start rejecting and being assertive, and then coming to work together as Africans. And of course, we'll talk about this.
Thank you, Kwame, for that. Now, as we always do, this is a Pan-African media platform, so all we care about is Africa. Of course, we care about also the globe, because we are part of the world, and what happens in the world will impact us. That's something, a fact, and that's why we bring global events. G7, none of the African members are in it, but we still bring it here and analyze it, because there is a business for Africa to see business, in a sense that there is something that Africa have to watch. We are part of the globe, and Africa should have an eye, a listener, as this thing is happening, what we do here. Actually, we are, as Kwame said, we are trying to do things on the ground. And one of the things that we are trying to do is to close that gap between African institutions, African heads of states, and the civil society groups. So we do distribute these things, whom we think that, and to the connections that we have to the heads of states, and or advisors, we try really to reach them out so that they listen, or their advisors can listen to it. Now, so then what should then Africa be looking at from this event, from this G7 summit, the one that just happened? And of course, considering what is going on around it, with all the given happening there.
Yeah, I think that as Africans, I think is time for us to understand that colonialism did not stop, and it is, of course, colonialism as usual, as you have seen, the United States imposing its policy, and all the Europeans trying to impose their policy across the globe, trying to force countries, in broad daylight, trying to force countries to move their way. Don't do this, don't put up oil pipeline, don't do that, don't, go this side, don't ban homosexuality. So they're trying to interfere in various countries. They dictate to Ethiopia, trying to dictate to South Africa, trying to dictate to what is happening in Guinea, in Uganda and Kenya, and all this, bomb countries. So it is time for us to come to that reality once again and understand that what is going on across the globe is the normal colonialism, the European colonialism, and such a meeting is a meeting of colonial powers, as we have rightly seen, is a meeting of colonial countries whose purpose is to dominate and colonize, continue colonizing the world. And so this means that as Africans, we should try to strike out an independent policy. An independent policy as African leaders. This policy, we cannot strike it out if we don't come together and work together. And this starts with us Pan-Africanists coming together also and making our effort, which we are already making as Connect Africa, putting out our effort, pushing our effort to support those various and particular leaders who have shown that this is the direction in which they want to go. They want to go in the direction of Pan-Africanism. They want to go in the direction of independent policy, independent African policy. They are recognizing that this group is a group of colonial countries who want to perpetually subjugate Africa and put it down and colonize it and exploit Africa's raw materials for their benefit at the expense of the African people. So Pan-African organizations have to come together to advise these particular leaders in one way or the other. One person will ask, how will they advise? Of course, these are the questions which we want to discuss when we come together as Pan-Africans. How should we do it? There's different ways which we can do it. So, and those, of course, we cannot discuss them here. If you have suggestions, you can put down in the comment section. You can contact us. Mahlet has the contacts, of course. The email is there, in the description, message description, in the video description. You can reach out to us and then we can discuss those. So it is time, I think, also for us to integrate and intensify our integration as Africans and as African countries. It is time for that. And we have seen people like President Ruto of Kenya. We have seen the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed trying to move in that direction. We have to start integrating on almost all levels. Almost all levels. We have seen the Prime Minister Abiy at the 35th Ordinary Session of the African Union in 2021 suggested the creation of a Pan-African media house. This issue has not been taken on. So it is important that as Pan-Africanists, we take note of these important suggestions that our great leaders, some of our great leaders among the leaders which we have on the continent, are putting up and write down and note them and do a follow-up on them. Because if we reach out to them and say, you spoke about this, can we participate? Can we find a way of creating it? Because he has access to an ample, amount of resources. You never know, he will put it up and say, let us start it. let the people run it. Let a group of African youth who are already on YouTube, let Wademaya and whoever who are on the continent come together and create this media house. We will be financing it and putting some money in it, on a periodical basis. And these are the things which he was talking about. And these are the things also, this is in the way, this is one of the ways in which Pan-Africanism can reach out. So I think that it is important, not only the leaders to understand, but also we as Pan-Africanists to understand that this is what we are supposed to do for the good of our continent. Now, also, I think that it's time for us to integrate our infrastructure as Africans. When you're talking about railways, President William Ruto, when he was speaking recently to a meeting which was organized by the private sector in Kenya in the framework of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, mentioned the integration of our railway infrastructure and building a railway infrastructure which connects from the Indian Ocean or the East African Ocean all the way to to the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf of Guinea, all through the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is the way we are supposed to be thinking. The integration of our payment system. Many people, people these days are talking about de-dollarization, for example, but people don't know that actually the African Union, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, was the first, to publish and come up with a system of payment which will be strictly African, which eliminates the dollar, which is called the Pan-African payment system, Pan-African payment and and settlement system. So this system was put up by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and also President Ruto spoke about it during this meeting which happened in Nairobi by the private sector, which happened with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So these are the things which we need to, to be carrying out. But more so, Pan-Africanists, I think they need to come to the front, to put up a very good fight, a very strong fight, and support all our great leaders who are already fighting on the front line, as presidents for the good of the Africa we want. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Really, yeah, that was very interesting. We did on Connect Africa before, really, when the Pan-African payment system was introduced. I think from its the people who came up with the idea or with the app, whatever technology, whatever that thing is called, was from Nigeria, but the African Continental Free Trade Area adopted it. And it was really, really widely accepted by a number of Pan-Africanists and different business people, because it really facilitates the business between the African countries, because it was a major issue how we are going to, when these things start, how we are going to transact. But an interesting point from before all this de-dollarization became a hot issue. So yeah, there you have the African Continental Free Trade Area already solved its problem. Now, today is kind of a shorter session. So we have covered what we need to cover about the G7 summit. On Thursday, we will meet again. I think that's it for us. Please, if you did not subscribe, please subscribe, be a family, and then share this video. One of the things beside, I have put also here our PayPal account. Then you can help us, you can support the channel so we can be here more often. There are a lot of things going on globally. So for us, really to select which one, it's always tricky, and because everything affects Africa, what's happening, and we want to bring all those things. We don't want just pass them by. But now, this is where we are. We are here twice a week. But we want to do it more often. Please support our channel. In addition to that, share this video. Let the information, the knowledge share to reach to different people your network, your family. It doesn't matter. And also, when this stream is over, we have in the description section our PayPal account, so you can support us through that. But also, we will bring the videos that we make related to this. Like, we will put you a link, the one on the American banks collapsing. I think, like saying what's happening. And so we really analyzed it very well. And then I think if there's anything related also, we will put it there. But yeah, thank you for those of you who have been here. Thank you very much. So Kwame, before we say bye-bye, I will give you a minute maybe to say something.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone who has been on the channel. If you came late, but you are still here with us, we want to thank you. And we are saying participate in the work. The continent is not going to be liberated by anyone but us. And so if some people have come out there to start a small work, however small it is a contribution, and whatever small thing you do on your side is a contribution. So it is not only us you should support, but support all Pan-African organizations which are out there. We have seen Africa Continental Free Trade, we have seen Africa Continental Free Trade Area, of course, doing a good job. The Secretary General, Prime Minister, Secretary General Wemekele, is doing a good job. Other Pan-African organizations, of course, the Africa Continental Unity Party, they are there out there doing a good job. The whole movement of Chairman Omali Yashitela, go out there and support them. So numerous Pan-African organizations are carrying out a lot of work. Do the support, and let the people who are on the front also be energized to fight harder with your contribution. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame. And this is our viewer, CNS. He said, a critical look at history shows that G7 was specifically put in place to ensure implementation of the structural adjustment programs, or otherwise known as SAPs, in the global south. So I just wanted to bring that out to give it a highlight. Thank you very much, Sandes, for your input. He suggests, as always, things to read, or he suggests us to reader to the viewers on topics related to what we discuss here. So please continue to put your input here. We appreciate that. Have a good evening. So until Thursday, it's bye-bye from us. Bye. Thank you, Kwame. Ciao. Yeah, bye.